Happy Father's Day to all of the wonderful dads around the world who sacrifice, love, and take care of their children. Even children who we were all children. And we thank you, dads. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your teachings. Thank you for being a blessing. God, we thank you for all fathers, all those men who have impacted our lives, those brothers who have poured into us in some kind of way, Sunday school teachers, teachers in school, role models, fathers, uncles, cousins, friends. Thank you, God, for those men who were patient with us in our growth and development and taught us what it meant to love God and for God to love us. And we are thankful. Amen. John chapter 11, beginning at verse 39. I'll read a few of these verses. Jesus, once more, deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But Lord," said Martha, the sister of Lazarus, "by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been dead 4 days." Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his bands and feet. His hands and feet were wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." Jesus was a good father to Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. In chapter 10 of John's Gospel, John highlights the metaphor of shepherd and sheep, giving and explaining the details of how a shepherd loves his sheep. And then he also highlights in John chapter 11, the father and son, how God is an awesome father to Jesus. John is really reminding us the relationship between a shepherd and a sheep is similar to a father and a child. Not only was Jesus a shepherd for the sheep, but Jesus was also a father figure for Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Throughout John chapter 11, John reminds us that Jesus loved Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Jesus was a father figure to Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And Jesus was a good father to Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, because Jesus blessed Lazarus because he loved them. Jesus performed a miracle for their family because he loved them. And throughout that chapter 11, the first 5 verses, John reminds us that Jesus loved Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. There's nothing more powerful than to be loved by a good father. Oh, how many of us are blessed or were blessed by a loving father. There were some things that our fathers did for us because our fathers loved us. Our fathers were moved and motivated by love. All the things our father did for us, all the things our fathers do for us, their actions, their motives, their acts of kindness were produced by love. Jesus loved Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. The joy, the life-changing experience to be loved by a father. Sometimes that love is tough, strong, tender. The love has the power to be what it needs to be to help us grow and develop. There's nothing more powerful than a father's love, the father's willingness to say yes, the father's ability to say no, the father's wisdom to say wait. There's nothing more powerful than that father's love, because when we know we're loved by a good father, our self-esteem develops. Our self-worth becomes powerful, and we walk and move and flow with a certain confidence. When you know you're loved by a good father, your confidence gets strong. You know who you are in the world, and you know who you are as a child of God. When one has been loved by a good father, you develop a way of being so strong and confident in your walk with God that what other folks say doesn't even bother you. What other folk do will not destroy you, because you're confident in a father's love that gave us power, strength, vitality, and joy. Jesus loved Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Not only did Jesus love them, but Jesus stood with them in the face of danger. In the text, all around them was death. Lazarus had passed. He had been dead 4 days, and the stench was everywhere. The smell of death was all around, but Jesus didn't flinch, because at the tomb was Mary, Martha, and Lazarus was there, and even though he was dead, he was there. Jesus stands with them in the midst of danger. With death all around, Jesus doesn't flinch. As a good father, he stands with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus at the entrance of the cave. At the tomb, he stands with them in their moment of danger. A good father knows how to stand with their children in moments of danger. When life throws us a curve, when we're going through a season of loss and pain, a good father will stand with us in a moment of danger. When our lives are threatened, when we are on the brink of giving up, and we feel overwhelmed, and the pressures of life make you feel like quitting, a good father will stand with their children in moments of danger. When we have lost everything and we are on the verge of being broken, hurt, and wounded, a good father knows how to stand with their children in moments of danger. A good father will not run, hide, ignore, but a good father stands with their children in moments of danger. Jesus stood with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus in their moments of danger. When death was all around, when the smell of death was in their presence, Jesus stood with them in moments of danger. How many of us have good stories of our Father standing with us in moments of danger? Have you ever gone through a loss? Ever gone through a storm or a test, but Daddy stood with you? Ever gone through something and you almost quit, you almost gave up, but daddy stood with you? I remember clearly, my dad is gone now. Dad's been gone 2 years. Man, I can't believe it. But I remember my dad standing with me in my moments of crisis. When I had lost it all, when I was homeless for 6 months, it was my daddy who stood with me, held me up and gave me words of encouragement and said, son, don't forget, you believe and you preach resurrection. Sometime you got to resurrect and get up in the same place you were crucified. Don't run, don't duck, don't hide, don't crumble. You stand right there and let God lift you. It was my daddy who stood with me in a moment of crisis. And thank God for fathers who are standing with their children in moments of crisis, holding them up, giving them words of comfort and reminding them you serve a God who's on the brink and the verge of giving you a resurrection. It may seem like it may seem and feel like it's all lost. You may believe and feel like there's no hope and everything you have is crumbling at your feet. And you're standing in the midst of ashes where your life is falling apart. But you got a father who's reminding you that you're just getting ready for a resurrection. Your crucifixion, your pain, your hurt, your trial, your test and your storm, just getting you ready for resurrection. Everything in your life that has broken you down is getting you ready for God to lift your spirits and lift your life. God stands with us in the midst of crucifixion, but God also stands with us on the brink of resurrection. Jesus stood with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus as they faced the danger. Not only did Jesus stand with them, Jesus was risking his life to resurrect Lazarus. For Jesus to come back to Judea, for Jesus to come back to Bethany, where his life had previously been threatened. They were trying to kill Jesus. But he loved Mary, Martha, and Lazarus enough to risk his life to bless their life. Jesus was willing to risk his life for the folk that he loved. His life was at risk for going back and blessing Lazarus. He risked his life to go back to Bethany, to go back to Judea in order to bless the folk that he loved. A good father will risk his life for the people that he loved. A good father will put his life on the line for the folk that he loves. A good father will put it all on the line for the people that he loved. Jesus put his life at risk to bless Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. A good father will risk his life to bless his family. It was in January, and I was reading the story of Peyton Hollis, who was on a trip in Florida and Pensacola, and he risked his life, his children. And in the midst of risking his life to save his children, he found himself in ICU fighting for his own life. And by the grace of God, he's healed today. But Peyton Hillis, a former running back in the NFL, risked his life to save his drowning children. A father has no problem in risking it all and risking everything to save their children. And we have different ways where father risks everything to save their children. How many fathers working 2 and 3 jobs to save and bless their children? How many fathers put their lives and health on the line to bless their family. How many fathers would do everything and anything possible to make sure their families are safe, their children are secure, and their families are taken care of? But a good father does not mind taking the risks and doing everything necessary to make sure the family is blessed and the family is taken care of. I never will forget, I was watching a man go around Birmingham picking up cans and placing the cans in a grocery cart. He went around the city picking up cans and converting the cans into cash. And when I asked him, I said, "Doc, why are you picking up cans?" He said, "Man, listen, I got 3 kids. I got to do what I got to do to take care of my family. If I got to pick up cans the rest of my life to get my bills paid, if I got to pick up cans to make sure my kids can eat, I got to do what I got to do to make sure my families are blessed." He said, "Doc, I'm not too proud to pick up cans. If I got to pick up cans, work 2 jobs, work 3 jobs to make sure my family is blessed and my children are taken care of as a father, sir, I got to do what I got to do to take care of my children." A father, a good father, does not mind putting it all on the table and risking it all to make sure the family is blessed, okay, safe, and secure. Jesus was a good father to Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. He loved them. He stood with them in the face of danger. He risked his life in order to bless them. And then he began to pray. He's at the tomb, death all around, audience listening to his prayer. He says, "Father," he starts talking to his father. He says, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me." Past tense. Past tense. In other words, this ain't my first time coming to you. We've already talked about this. You've already heard me. I'm not coming for something new. This is not our first time having this conversation. I thank you that you have heard me. And I knew, past tense, that you always hear me. Thank you that you have heard me. And I knew that you always hear me. But for those standing around, make this miracle happen so they will know that you have sent me. And then Jesus said in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come forth." Lazarus heard his voice. Lazarus heard his voice, the voice of a good shepherd, the voice of a good father. Lazarus heard his voice when Lazarus was in the midst of death, when Lazarus was wrapped up in grave clothes, when Lazarus was in the cave, when Jesus spoke and Jesus called his name. Lazarus heard his voice, and the voice of his father made him get up out the grave and loosen the grave clothes he was in. It was hearing his father's voice. There's nothing more powerful than to hear the voice of a good daddy, the voice of a good father, to give it the power to shake off the atmosphere and the pains of death and struggle. There's nothing more powerful than to hear the voice of a good father, to give you strength to overcome what you're in right now. It was the voice of Jesus that called Lazarus' name. "Lazarus, come out." And it was the voice of Jesus calling Lazarus' name that brought Lazarus out of his state of death, out of a season of death. And Lazarus walked out of death with a new walk and a new joy and a new faith. How many of us, during our moments of being down, during our moments of hurt, it was the voice of a good father who called our name. And in calling our name, we heard that voice.